Everyone, welcome to the modern market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and frankly, any market that is pumping, because a lot of things are catching a lot of action over the last couple of days. We're going to get into all of it and more in just a little bit. Loaded up for discussion today, we have the Uptober pre-rally over the last week, with ETH outperforming, having a bit of a reflection on the various positions that we have, considering what ETH's outperformance is all about. Also, AI coins are moving. They're one of the biggest sector movers. We're going to go through a few sectors, but AI has been pretty hot, so we'll touch on that. And then on the meme side, Mudeng flies to a $44 million FTV from launch just a few days ago. Again, as we go across the various sectors, we'll be getting into all of those in just a little bit. We've also got the latest on price action and crypto and NFTs, and some discussion on how different sectors of the market are heating up, and an evaluation of the role of politics in price action at the moment. So stay tuned for that. Today we've got Legendary and Bread in the co-host seats. We're ready to get into it, but just before we do, friends, nothing that we say here is financial advice, because the market is very risky and we don't know which way it's going to go for sure. So please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Bread, it is Monday. It's the 23rd of September. You're on the move. You're on the move. You're in a new place. We spent a lot of time together the last few days. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I got the alpha because I'm actually closer in proximity to Mudang than basically anyone in crypto right now, the literal Mudang. So I'm contemplating going further north to touch the golden one because the thing's fucking hilarious. I saw that meme coin. I was like, I need to do that. Didn't at all, but I should have.
See, contemplating some real investigative journalism there.
Yeah, it could be fake. No one knows that, right?
Right. So you'll be leading that segment, which is the final 10 minutes. Grateful that you are the local expert in that particular
Local hippo correspondent.
We've got our resident Bitcoin correspondent, Funky, with us. Matthew, our resident American political commentator as well. Right. We've got is it Vietnamese meme?
Is it what, Moo?
Meme? Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah, he's oh wait, no, that's Thailand. He's in southern Thailand, just south of Bangkok.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay. So that's, yeah. And I'm in Malaysia now, as you know, so I'm halfway between you guys and Mudang, because you're still down in the homeland.
I see. Okay. So we're covering all the regions here, as well as all the sectors. So we're going to cover all the sectors. We're going to cover all the regions too. Legendary, how's it going in your region? How's things with you?
GM doing quite well. It's going pretty well in the European region. I like how Bread is branching out from doing the technical stuff to first branching into adult content, now into actually meeting the meme main characters, the actual protagonists of the memes. So I do like that content diversification.
It's important to diversify, isn't it? You can't have all of the eggs in one basket.
I was working really hard in my brain to try to tie together like bread being a versatile thing, but then my brain went to potatoes because I think potatoes is commonly the joke that can be used for fucking everything. So kind of carb related. I'm carb adjacent to potatoes, and therefore I'm inheriting a lot of its versatility.
You know how important potatoes have been for humankind? Serious question.
Yeah, very. Yeah.
You can see that. So basically the army, very quick side story on that. The army is obviously one of the best records of history that we have, because they tracked a lot of their data when it comes to their soldiers. And the French army was tracking the average size of the soldiers. And you can see an increase in the average height of a soldier after basically Europe discovered that potatoes can be eaten. They are like a viable food source, which happened centuries ago. And it was obviously widely available. It increased the caloric intake. And after that generation, basically the average height increased by, I think, roughly 2.5-ish inches. And you can see that basically if you look at the French army data, who was tracking the height of the soldiers, that potatoes were massively impactful for the caloric intake of our society in Europe, and also for the average height of humans.
Don't you guys ever let anyone come at you guys and say modern market isn't a wide sweeping, all encompassing project. You have potato facts, we have geography, we have crypto, we have meme coins, we have infrastructure. It's pretty well rounded if you ask me.
I mean, I just had more interesting context about potatoes, to be honest, but I've got a feeling potato. I'm actually not going to go into it because there's more I could do there, but absolutely love it. What a great way to start. But as always, let's get into the price action and the headlines as usual, starting with the cryptocurrency prices. We have Bitcoin up 1% at $63,500, up 8% in the last 7 days. ETH is up almost 3% in the last 24 hours to up to 2.65K, up almost more than 15% in the last 7 days. And Solana is up almost 10% in the last 7 days, but pretty much flat in the last 24 hours at $143. Getting into the headlines themselves, as we said, there's been kind of a rally across the board here. Majors are up the last week or so. The AI sector is up. Mentioned Tau is up 17% in 24 hours, up 80% in 7 days, 118% in the last 14 days. Also in the DeFi sector, you've got Aave at the highest it's been in a few years as well. So really kind of across the board, a lot of positive price action. Memes are kind of moving again as well. So we'll touch on all of those and more. Those are some of the main bits of price action. Also, later in the show, we'll touch on ordinals. Ordinals are kind of bounced from where they were. I think some of those main collections heading up to like the 10K region, which we spoke about before. We on the show the other day, we were literally saying they seem a bit cheap, but like 6K, for being the top ordinals on Bitcoin. So those have kind of moved up. In terms of some notable sales, we had big art sales too. Obviously, Xcopy keeps moving. There were 2 edition sales for 55 ETH and 45 ETH. So that is pretty bullish for Xcopy. And then also the Videodrome Lost Robbie sold for 200 ETH. If you're not familiar with that one, we are sharing this on video. As always, we're live on X video as well as YouTube video as well. That's always a favorite when that one starts moving. Considered a real kind of gem when it comes to AI art and the kind of lore when it comes to NFT, fine digital art collecting. Those are the headlines. That's the price action. Legendary. Why don't we head over to our NFT marketplace partner Mintify and see what is going on over there?
Absolutely. Let's take a look at what JPEGs are doing today. Bored Apes basically unchanged over the last 24 hours, sitting at an 11.8 ETH floor. Pudgies, same story, unchanged, 10.7 ETH floor. Azuki's up 2.5% at a 5.76 ETH floor. Milady's down 1.6% at a 3.21 ETH floor. DGOT's continuing the downtrend, down 8% over the last 24 hours, down 40% over the last 7 days at a 1.18 floor, 1.18 ETH floor. Gaming is.
Did they top around the meme coin conversion thing? Like, was that the blow off and then?
And then basically ever since they have been selling off, yes, and they have been selling off with significant volume today. The last 24 hours saw 103 ETH in volume for that sell-off, and that's basically has been the stat for the last 7 days.
Tale as old as time. Sell the news.
Indeed. Gaming, however, is looking good. We talked about Pirate Nation on Friday, where they had a big update and the price was going up on that. Similarly, Nexian Gems in the Skyborn ecosystem are doing very well. They are up 30% over the last 7 days, 15% over the last 24 hours at a 0.86 ETH floor. And a couple of minutes ago, actually, before we started the show, Whale put out a post on what the NFT market is doing on 3-month time horizon, basically. So what happened over the last quarter. And if we extrapolate that, we'll see that Azuki is actually the collection who has won most of the last 3 months, being up 82%, followed by Mutants, 36%, Doodles up 34%, Apes up 30%, Pudgies up 20%, same for Little Pudgies. And if we look at the biggest losers over the last 3 months, it's actually Milady's, down from 5.35 ETH to 3.21 ETH, down 40%. OMB's down 20%. Captains, Mockaverse, Mad Lads, all down between 9 and 10%.
Interesting. Did Milady's ever drop that token? The cult token?
I don't think so.
I mean, we almost certainly would have heard about it if they did, right?
I would.
I was
hope
more
so.
thinking about how they were the counterculture thing, and then they became the cool thing that everyone was doing. And if that has any indication of, or was that like a precursor to, okay, number go down now because it's the consensus like anti thing, which is the consensus thing, which is now it's cringe, cool kind of thing.
I mean, that's probably at play as well. But I have to think, all in addition to that, I think that's definitely happened on some level. But I think also, if you say you're going to do a token, you got to do the token, especially if they might have even raised for it as well. I can't remember if they like did a bit of a pre-sale for that as part of it. Legendary, aside from that, what's kind of catching your attention? Thank you for that excellent summary. What else is you kind of got your eye on at the moment?
Definitely the Telegram ecosystem, which I think we'll also touch later on in the show either way. But we had Catizen doing their TGE, launching at a $1 billion FTV. We had Wattcoin doing the TGE just 1 hour and 17 minutes ago. Did very well. I think it was up to 1,000% on the centralized exchanges. Also well above 100 million FTV. We'll have Hamster Combat this week. So 3 major TGEs over the course of basically a bit more than 7 days. And it's going to be interesting to see what that means for other projects. Will they move now more into Telegram? Will other TGEs be accelerated? We will see basically the same thing that we've seen with gaming, where we had a wave of TGEs where the first ones did pretty well, and then the hype did cool off, which I very much assume that it will be the same pattern, but definitely an interesting time to watch and participate in that ecosystem for sure.
Let's actually, yeah, let's do that bit now, because I think the Telegram thing in one of the final segments is kind of attached to some other stuff as well. So since you mentioned it, that's pretty impressive, isn't it? Like, Web3 gaming for so long has been considered, well, at least on the investment side, I guess people considered that it had got overheated. Valuations kept rising quite aggressively over and over again, whether that was on ETH or so, maybe predominantly on ETH, because that seems to be the stuff that we looked at and that we even participated in sometimes. And Telegram's kind of come out of the blue, round the back with all of these like huge, colossal numbers, which, to be fair, we have expressed some like cynicism about, right? Like the scale of the numbers that they're reporting has been almost unbelievable. So we did put a little bit of a question mark against it. But look, when these things go liquid, well, obviously not entirely liquid, and maybe Legendary, you can speak to some of the tokenomics to explain here. Like when we're saying, so you said that one of them came out at 300 FTV, one came out at 100 FTV. You've got the Hamster Combat one, which I think it's fair to say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, like the main one that everyone was like maybe the most excited for, that had captured the most attention. So why do you think that these things have come out so hot and so strong and so solid?
Just a correction on the number. Catizen did come out at 1 billion FTV and has now corrected down to 750 mil. And
Okay.
just to add a bit more to that, and then I'm going to answer your question in a second. If we look at the volume, because it provides a bit of extra color, $330 million trading volume over the last 24 hours, 155 million market cap. So it's not a low float, high FTV token. Again, 155 mil market cap out of 750 mil
Like
is not
20-ish%?
it's time 5, it's 20-ish%, pretty much, pretty spot on, yeah. So that's
Okay.
absolutely not low float at all. If you compare some of the low float tokens that maybe launched with 3 or 4%,
Yeah,
I think
it's not high, but it's also not low.
I think it's rather high to come out at TG with 20% of the circulating supply as a game. It's significantly higher than what other games did previously. I think what we're seeing is, yes, there is definitely skepticism around the numbers of millions and millions of users, but we're seeing a culmination of two things. Telegram is a huge ecosystem. It's an ecosystem that have been ignoring, I would say, quote unquote, in the West. We don't really talked about it on the show. We covered it, but we don't talk about it on the show as part of the daily snapshot. We say, look, this is the ton price today. We just do BTC, ETH, and Solana, and Telegram had a massive rally, and people were a bit late to that. And the question then always becomes, what's the beta play? What's something else that I can invest on? And then you look at the things that will do a TG that are on Telegram and that get attention. And that definitely has been the sector of clicker games. And if you see that and you see 30 million users, 200 million users, whatever, and you're like, oh, and they're going to do a token, let's bid that up, is probably a hypothesis that we see playing out right now.
Interesting. That
I
is
don't like
very.
it. I don't want a piece of it. It feels too messy to me.
What's your thinking, Brad?
I don't know, man. Like, so I just the ecosystem broadly, like something doesn't feel right. I don't know what it is. Something does not feel right. I know talking to developers, they don't like the actual like underlying blockchain itself. It's kind of clunky, whatever. All these games are not really on-chain games. They just do a lot of off-chain shit in Telegram and then all of a sudden drop a coin after the fact. Like something just feels off to me, and I don't know what it is. And it is probably because I'm not much of a meme coiner, but it like the friction to get in and do all this stuff, I feel like it's just another similar to the ordinal situation where it's like people are doing shit that doesn't feel like good, but they're making money, so it makes you crawl over there to do it, and you do it, and then you get trapped over there buying someone else's bags, and that's just like, I don't know, man. I'm comfortable watching this one fly by me is all I'm saying.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess you are probably closer to the developer side of things and maybe the more technical aspects. So that's interesting to hear that perspective. I know that I put my hands up. I've definitely been skeptical of it. Just coming back to those kind of two main ones that have launched Legendary before we go into today's discussion point. So two have launched. One has corrected to 750 FTV. Did you say the other one was at 100 FTV?
Yeah, I have the other one. I have Wattcoin in a second as well to share it on screen. Currently trading at 0.17 cents, so $0.0017. It did come out at 120 mil in terms of the FTV. Obviously, 3.4 mil in 24-hour trading volume because the token literally just launched 1 hour and 20 minutes ago. Don't have the stats on the circulating supply yet to report them.
Sure. Okay. So that's interesting. And then, so what do you think the hamster combat will come out at, since we're kind of on the topic and that's maybe the most anticipated one? Do you think, I mean, if it's the most anticipated, it should be higher than all of them, right?
That's the question. What's more important? I mean, Captain did insane numbers as well. So
Okay.
I would say it is comparable to Hamster Combat. Maybe from that perspective, if you look at that, it should be at the 1 billion FTV as well. On the other hand, Wattcoin with the gaming ecosystem in the background also reported user numbers that I think on the daily user, where daily average user side were even higher than Catizen. So the numbers don't directly translate to the FTV. It's more a question of the hype. Then the question is Hamster Combat really the thing that's most hyped because it's the one that we certainly seen on the timeline most that kind of initiated that talk about the Telegram clicker games? Or is the factor stronger that Catizen was the first one to basically launch and have the TG, and Degens don't have a massive amount of patience and they just want to ape into the first thing that's live. I don't know what's going to outweigh that. Personally, I think that Hamster Combat should come out at a couple 100 mil, but I could also be completely wrong. Also, a small.
This shit looks like the friend token price to me. Like, I'm looking at Catizen now. This like the crazy disproportionate numbers of individual cells versus like if you look at the buys and sells, like first of all the chart's like starting to go down only since it launched. A little bit of pump after.
Brad, you still got that friend trauma though. Let's be honest.
Well, so I do, but also this very unique like view of buys and sells versus like the volume and buyers and sellers when it's so crazy heavy, like individual small sellers versus like big numbers coming in. Like that just shows you how, in my mind, again, going back to Friend was crazy heavily sybiled, crazy heavy. Like people spun up entire farms farming this token that were not cut away at all. And whenever that happened, you had infinite pressure post launch where all of these individual fucking under $100 holders of this coin were just selling forever. And like that is the exact same thing that I saw, right? Like that, where the individual unique buyers and sellers was crazy heavyweight sellers, even though the volume was kind of like 50-50 ish.
And so the way you've identified that from the book is like just seeing loads and loads of small cells, you think?
Not even like you can just look at it, right? If you go to the 24-hour numbers, like there's 3 metrics that'll show buys, sells, buy volume, sell volume, buyers, sellers. And like in the last 24 hours, the buyers is 700, the sellers is 11,000. So
Oh, okay.
like 11x the amount of sellers, but the volumes are roughly the same, right? It's 350 to 399. So individual unique people are selling these things. They're probably just, again, they sybiled it with 1,000 accounts, and then they each got a little bit of a token, and then each one of those things are selling automatically from whatever. That's just very reminiscent of the friend. I lived it. I remember looking at it and go, oh, once these guys are out, we're up only. Guess what happened? Down only after they left too.
That's a great metric. That's a great shout out. Thanks for bringing that up, because every time that that's not a metric I look at that often, but when I have seen it, they usually are a bit closer than that. And this is like a clear, big discrepancy. I think. Legendary, maybe one final question on this before we hit the big discussion topic for the day. Like, if someone was, I know Bread is out of this. He doesn't want to go over to Telegram and get trapped. But if someone did want to go and like trade it, obviously it's not as straightforward as, it's not like an EVM wallet or something. Like, what can you do?
It's actually pretty easy, but also
Okay.
just the disclosure on my end that I do have a position in Whatcoin. You
Exciting.
want a Telegram wallet, and there is, let me tell you.
Is this all mobile, by the way?
No, you can do it mobile as well, but you can do it as part, like your Rebby wallet or whatever wallet you're using.
I used Tonkeeper when I was playing over there.
You can use a wallet like Tonkeeper. You have your DeFi protocols like Ston.fi, Dex Diamonds, DDust. You have CoffeeSwap as a Dex aggregator as well. And you can basically trade there in an interface that looks extremely similar to what you're familiar with if you have played around on Ether, on Solana. So the DEXs, the way you do transactions is basically the same. It's just a different wallet and a different name for the platforms that you're using. And obviously you can trade that on a centralized exchange as well, but there's really no need for that. The only thing you will need is to have a bit of ton on that wallet for your transaction fees. And yes, while you could bridge it over, I would dare argue that the simplest way still would be to just send some ton from a centralized exchange to that wallet and not bother with bridging. That's at least how I did it, because I wanted to save some time and not investigate and researching bridging routes.
Okay. Interesting stuff. Thanks for that explanation. I'm glad we just did the ton segment now, because I think that's kind of interesting. You just can't ignore that kind of stuff when this has happened, especially when people talk about gaming being dead. And I completely take your point, Brad, that noticing those buyers and sellers is probably an important metric and something to keep an eye on. And maybe we can circle back on that to, like, I don't know, to get a handle on whether this is true or not. But yeah, I'm glad we did that section now. The final thing I wanted to talk about briefly before we hit the headlines today was something I've been thinking about for a while. It's to do on the political side, but luckily we don't need to get too political to discuss it, because it's mostly about price action. I'm sure I said this the other day, and the VanEck team, or someone on the VanEck team, Legendary, I don't know if you can bring up that article in the discussion section.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of share the same thing. They basically put forward this idea that Kamala Harris would be better for Bitcoin than Trump. And I know the consensus thing is that Harris is bad because of regulation. And I'm pretty sure I've articulated this before. When I'm going through the scenarios for who wins and what that does for the ecosystem, everyone seems to come to the conclusion that Trump is good because he is pro. And so maybe you get some clarity. Maybe he sets like he creates some kind of strategic reserve. Like, okay, fine, that would be bullish. But also there's chat, and this is what I was going with towards the other day, where it's like, look, I have no idea if they'll ever actually do this. They might try to get on top of the finances a bit more. They might try to make some cuts. They might try to, there's talk of Elon becoming some type of efficiency person. Like if Elon takes like a knife to various departments, just starts cutting, then look, that's probably bullish for that's good for the states to get on top of this situation, but that's actually bearish Bitcoin, because because if you think about what Bitcoin is, like it's a hedge against all of that stuff. It's almost like so long as people are being increasingly irresponsible, and especially because people are forward looking, people will be bullish on Bitcoin so long as the people are being irresponsible. And I think the more responsible people attempt to be, even if they're either not going to do it or they might be unsuccessful at doing it, because the market's forward looking, it's like, well, look, they're going to try and make some cutbacks. So maybe we're less bullish on this hedge, this asset that's supposed to be a hedge for the future. And so I guess what the argument this article is making is that even if, now obviously all of that gets offset by the fact if he's like so pro that he sets Bitcoin as a strategic reserve, then that's like, that just sends everything, I assume. But I guess the point of this article is like, I don't know necessarily if you'd necessarily need to be bearish with Harris, because if they were to continue the policies that have kind of led to where we are now, kind of set up for like a bullish scenario. And the thing that I always go back to 2021, when people will say like, oh, but they're suing people, they are being hostile, they're not giving regulatory clarity for the industry. I agree with all those things, and I think that is annoying and it's terrible for the people who work in the industry and want that clarity. But insofar as we're only discussing price, I don't think it makes a difference, because in 2021 we didn't have any clarity. We had no regulation that was useful. We had hostile, people in charge, and the price could still send. So yes, I think it would still be better for there to be better regulatory clarity, but I don't think it matters who wins. Is actually my final conclusion on this. And this is the thing I was thinking about over the weekend. I'm going to stress about, not that I was necessarily stressing about it, but I'm going to put this like way to the side, I think, in the rest of my analysis for the rest of the way I treat the market, because I've kind of come to the conclusion I don't think it matters at all.
Would you say, B check, that it doesn't matter because it's up and to the right?
The thing is, Brad, when I'm saying that, I told a bit of a story at the same time, I did a whole dramatic story rather than just saying that we're going up and to the right. But yes, do you have anything to add apart from that, Brad, or is that just how you synthesize what I just said?
No, I mean, honestly, yeah, like, so that is the general sentiment I have been hearing on podcasts and amongst people for the last, I don't know, a few weeks, to be honest, month plus. It's you either have the tailwinds of Trump being pro industry, good for us, or you have the Harris administration, which is continuing to debase the U.S. dollar, which then drives people like psychologically to something that is hard money, right? The narrative of Bitcoin becomes more appealing to those people, and in both of those scenarios, like, yeah, it's beneficial for us as an industry. That's kind of where I've sat a little bit.
I thought you were just going to say in both of those scenarios.
I didn't for you.
I could tell. You chose the different words on purpose. Legendary, any further thoughts on this? Any pushback? Any further considerations?
Yeah, further consideration would be, I think in Web3 we have the tendency to look at the election like as a single voter issue and be like, Trump's better for that, hence we go Trump. But I think if you follow that line of thought, there's so many more factors that go into it, because this article makes the argument, beautifully formulates it, that Harris will accelerate many of the structural issues that drive Bitcoin adoption in the first place. And then you have Trump would be more pro crypto, but then there's also other things coming in. We've seen the invasion in Ukraine, we've seen the conflicts in Middle East that are impacting the market, stock market, then are impacting crypto as well. So even if one candidate is pro crypto and the other one is anti crypto, there's a lot of other things that have to do with finance, with geopolitical stuff, with military conflicts that also impact the markets. So it's absolutely impossible to predict what candidate will have exactly what impact on the election, and we'll never be able to explore, reality with Harris and one with Trump as a president, and then say, in the end, 4 years after that, Trump was better or Harris was better, because the regulatory stance is just one aspect, and obviously I would prefer to have regulatory clarity, but I just don't think that it's accurate to dumb it down to say one person number go up, other person number go down. But I'm also very curious to hear on that from Funky, who has his hand raised.
Jam guys, yeah, I mean, largely concur with what B said and everybody else has already said. I've been saying it for months at this point. I really don't think it matters who wins, because at the end of the day, they're both going to print money. They're both going to spend a ton, whether that's tax cuts or social programs. It doesn't matter. You look at the one thing I would say is that traditionally, although we can't really say, because there's not enough data, but traditionally markets overall do better under Republican presidencies. There is that, we can't ignore it, but you look at the vast majority of Bitcoin's history, for instance, that was all under Obama's administration. So really that point I don't think stands when it comes to Bitcoin. But even more broadly, I just wanted to share a little bit of alpha. So last week I was in the Blockchain Association monthly member meeting because of my side work with Ardent and the ARC blockchain ecosystem. And they did say they now are in contact with Harris's policy team for their campaign. That doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things, but they were having issues trying to get in contact with the policy team. And so now that they are, I feel that that's a good step in the right direction, because maybe they are making inroads. And for those who are listening who have no context, Blockchain Association is the largest trade association or advocacy network in the United States. All the big companies are a member of this, including Brett and I's favorite Coinbase. So I love going to these meetings because I feel I get all sorts of interesting info, whether it's about the NFT bill or what have you. So there is some things that there are some things happening, that are afoot behind the scenes that I think are very bullish, regardless of who it is. So I think that's just the same point that I come to. It's the conclusion I've made a long time ago. And, no offense to whoever's voting on either side. I mean, my personal moral code, I can't vote for either of them. And as I will still do, and I continue to say to anybody, write in Michael Saylor. There is no second best.
Love it. Thank you for sharing your insights and your perspective on that. Also wanted to shout out some of the YouTube comments. We have Benny Del Mundo saying, up and to the right, it doesn't matter if the world is fucked. And we have Overarch with a strong take saying, anyone who truly believes in crypto and decentralization, Harris is obviously net negative. Yeah, they print more money, but why wouldn't you want a pro-industry government, Gary gone, etc.?
Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, it's a reasonable question for people who are maybe single issue voters. But I guess, when we've even been speaking to different people who are friends and on both sides of the aisle, sometimes there are other things, there are other things which are exceptionally important to them as well. And whilst we are, completely deep into this kind of stuff, some people prioritize some other things. And that's obviously part of the conversation and part of the decision-making process. So reasonable thoughts, interesting discussion as always. Just wanted to put that out there because I'm feeling more and more confident about that in my thinking. Obviously, I don't know anything for sure because I do not, but that is where my mind is at. But we're going to continue this conversation broadly about crypto in general. We're going to switch the conversation maybe to ETH now, where ETH has been outperforming in the last week. And got to say, I am enjoying what I am seeing. Legendary, got to come to you first. You are on record, maybe last week, at saying that it was for the first time you were getting a bit angsty about your ETH position. We're not happy with how it's performing. I think lots of people were in the same boat as you for sure. But this is maybe one of the first times I heard you actually articulate it fully. Was that a bottom that you put in for the market for us? We appreciate your service. How are you feeling about it now versus all these other majors?
Yeah, I mean, I have a very good timing on that, on selling the bottom. I did sell some of my ETH positions, not all of them. But on the other hand,
what did you switch for, by the way? Because remember, the thing that I was thinking of switching, it wasn't that I want out. It's I just really like the idea of Coinbase as a bet to be look, ETH is being annoying. Coinbase is still a kind of a de facto bet on ETH. So what were you thinking otherwise? And yeah, sorry, carry on. I interrupted.
No, absolutely. I did switch into Bitcoin, so didn't go into stables. Didn't want to take
There's no second best. Taking Funky's advice.
Yeah, didn't want to take risk off assets. But I still, I still stand by that point. I didn't feel good about that. And again, I've been holding ETH for 8 years. So ever since low 2 digits. And it felt a bit weird. I'm obviously glad to see that rally right now, but I'm also not unhappy to have shifted some of my portfolio in BTC, which is probably the asset that I have had ignored for the longest of times. And then for me, I think it's also important to have more exposure basically on the maximum risk on side, whether that's the Telegram clicker games or the things that seem to appear potentially new metas, as short or long lived as they might be. And to do that, I just want to have the more conservative, quote unquote conservative, because it's still crypto, part of my portfolio in BTC, where I just don't want to worry about things and play around with the rest. And ETH felt less comfortable. So I did the change, and still glad to see the pump, but I'm not unhappy with my decision.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm basically crippled when it comes to selling ETH. Like I'm not even like a crazy maxi. It's just I think I'm just wedded to these bags. Like I like them. I still find them so useful. Less useful than they were before, but I still find them very, very useful. But I take your point about Bitcoin. This is the first cycle where I've like, not from ETH, but from other things, like maybe angel stuff, which has turned out to be profitable. It's the first time I've been like consistently adding to Bitcoin like every month for the last few months. But Brad, want to bring you into this conversation. I know you've been like really diving into the weeds on the ETH side, whether it's ETH versus L2s versus Bitcoin L2s, Bitcoin rolling out, Solana, all this stuff. Like, how are you thinking about it? How you think about ETH as the asset? Is it money? Is it programmable? You know, this deflationary money. Like, what's your perspective?
Yeah. So coming out of Singapore, you guys know me. I'm not a big trader. I don't watch charts. I don't do any of that stuff. So for me, it's more of a sentiment thing that I'm paying attention to. Trying to see, because yes, there's a big shift, or not a big shift, but there's a big push pull within the Ethereum ecosystem about what should be prioritized, whether it's, trying to prioritize settlement, like all these L2s, Ethereum should just like be the place where all the other blockchains post their stuff, or if Ethereum should be the place where things take place. I know my graphic recently got featured on Bankless about, like what should take place on Ethereum, what activities, and versus like L2s. And right now the problem is 100% of that overlap is on L2s, right? Every single use case is done on L2s, and because of that, it's taking users from Ethereum. And whenever you start doing that, you stop having use for the actual Ethereum asset, even though it is typically the thing that's used on those L2s. It's a mental model thing, right? Like you're hanging out on Arbitrum, right? If that's your new home, you typically want to express bullishness for Arbitrum, and you want to do that through the ARB token and, whatever. So anyways, coming out of Breakpoint, it was just kind of seeing where the community conversation was. And right now it is a little bit on what should take place on which layer and how that should prioritize the development roadmap for Ethereum versus Solana versus L2s versus whatever. Because there's a lot of Solana bullishness coming out of Breakpoint. So, yeah, so you got something.
Right, I do have a follow-up question for you on that. Sorry, real quickly on that. Because we've also talked about kind of connecting Bitcoin and ETH, and he is thinking that BTCfi will play out on ETH, and that Coinbase has basically a large stake in that because of the newly wrapped BTC version, the CBBTC. We also had the CoinMarketCap article last week that we discussed that we've seen the TVL on BTCfi increasing to more than $1 billion. And I think we'll see more basically native BTCfi. I think B is more in the camp that BTCfi might play out on ETH. Where do you side on that question?
I think it'll take place on Ethereum just because it's actually programmable, because you have a lot of these constructions over on Bitcoin, but frankly, like the people that actually hold the vast majority of Bitcoin on Bitcoin don't trust other chains, like these side chains, like marked as L2s, whatever, on Bitcoin. And for whatever reason, there's a lot of trust, and DeFi is like an actual mature market on Ethereum. So we'll see if it continues to grow. You have a trusted entity, and Coinbase now talking about it. The problem is all that stuff can still take place on Base, and that can all be good for Base. That does not necessarily mean it's good for Ethereum. right? It's good for the meme of Ethereum, but because of the disjointed economic relationship between L2s and mainnet, you can have a shit ton of things taking place on base, and Ethereum, the asset, gets shekels, right? Like, yes, you have people transacting on Ethereum or on base. Yes, you have the meme of money on base, right? But if you want to express bullishness for base, you buy coin. If you want to express bullishness for base / superchain, you buy OP. Like it fractures. It's like a death of a thousand cuts because there's so many assets between where that stuff is taking place, or if BTCfi, you buy BTC. So like there's so many like buffers between all of this shit taking place on this layer where the users are and the actual core asset, which is Ethereum, and the layer 2 is not supplanting what the users were on mainnet. That like there's just, you lose a lot of direct value accrual to all of these buffers in between that ultimately don't make its way down to ETH, which is why I think you're seeing a lot of this frankly just bleeding out of the Ethereum asset, because you have all of these buffers between users, the direct user relationship, and ETH, the asset, that, and these L2s like don't frankly have to really like pick up any of that dead weight, because they just post whatever $100 or $1,000 a month in fees down to Ethereum mainnet, which is basically nothing when they're generating tens of millions of dollars. So yeah, it's overweight, and that's so yeah. BTC takes place on in Ethereum land on L2s, does not lead to value accrual for ETH, unfortunately, in my opinion.
Like it. Fantastic analysis. I got to say, I'm kind of aligning with that as well, but I think is an interesting point to go further, which is to say it might be on ETH. It doesn't necessarily mean that accrues value to ETH. Interesting stuff. Maybe a final question on this, Brad, because you said a lot of this is about sentiment, and a lot of people maybe were not with us in Singapore, or even if they were, might not have had some of the conversations that we had. How did you feel? So you've answered like ETH versus BTC. What about ETH versus Solana in a sense? So like you had token 2049. What was the vibe from that, or the conversations you had around that, versus your observations of like Breakpoint and the energy there and how they kind of coordinated and got that thing done? I've got some thoughts, but I want to hear what you say first.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, most of my stuff is going to be secondhand, because the people I talk to, maybe this is my own bubble, we're still bullish on ETH, the asset, and ETH, the ecosystem. I didn't go to Breakpoint directly. I didn't even go to Token 2049 or directly. I met side events and people directly in one-on-one meetings. And most of that stuff was not around like price action or whatever. It was mostly around what we were doing as individuals within either of the spheres. So I know reading secondhand accounts of how everyone else felt with vibes going through those things. Obviously, it was more a unified message coming out of Solana. Some companies talking about building on there. The stages were electric, whatever, all that stuff. The energy is a little bit different, but no personal comments on it.
Fair enough. The main observation I had, and this is something that some people really like, and some people don't. There's obviously like an increased element of centralization of Solana, which can be quite helpful. It seemed like they were incredibly coordinated, or that loads and loads of people had kind of been sitting on announcements in order to like drop them at Breakpoint. And it's like, look, Jupiter came with some announcements, Drift came with some announcements, the Solana phone came with some announcements. Like it seemed like a coordinated effort amongst people to like, look, let's just build up this. And someone compared it to like an Apple event, whereas like you're going to get a load of, it's going to be a bit dramatic, we're going to share all this stuff with you. Whereas obviously token 2049 is like, it's a bit more fragmented, right? Like it's not like ETH had a bunch of things to come and hit you over the head with. And again, I think that was like one of the frustrations, where it seems like Solana is certainly winning on the kind of community side, the messaging side, the coordination. And maybe that is literally a consequence of centralized and slightly more centralized entity versus the more decentralized stuff. Brad, you came off mute.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think that's more of a byproduct of where they are in their journey than anything else. I think Solana will eventually get to that point too. Like there's the Ethereum ecosystem, quote unquote, is so gargantuan at this point that you have all these L2s coming together. You have like so many projects pulling in so many directions. It's hard to get a unified message when there's that many entities at play, right? Solana is young enough that it does not have that problem yet, but it will, because it's already getting L2s built on it. It's already getting, so this is the same arc we're going to see with all of these smart contract platforms, with everything that's going to scale and try to like grow through their own stuff, and then eventually L2s will tack on, and then eventually L3s will tack on to their L2s. Like this point is coming for everyone, and it's pretty easy to see. Yes, but like I actually just got a notification from Infinex, which was like there were announcements on the Ethereum side that people were getting excited about. Infinex was one of them, abstracting away your DeFi experience. I've used it's pretty nice. But yeah, so I think it's just where they are in their thing as opposed to like a stark difference in the actual ecosystems.
That is a great point, because there were people who are building on L2s kind of looking kind of jealously at the Solana platform. Just like, oh, wouldn't it have been great to be doing something over there? Because it does look better than maybe if they were only building out on L2s. But the key thing as well that I think it'd be interesting for people to know is that I think we're going to see a lot more people building out across different places, and Infinex being one of them. If you're unfamiliar, Infinex is this kind of app which is supposed to operate like a decentralized exchange. Well, it's supposed to be able to replace your centralized exchange experience, but on chain. But it's going to have Solana, it's going to have L2s, it's going to have mainnet. So like the point is, everything's going to become. I think that's the end game for a lot of these things. Like it's too difficult when you're only building in one specific place, and the space is much bigger. And I think it's ready for someone to just provide a better holistic experience. We've got a few, only 8 minutes left. Legendary, unless you've got any final thoughts on this, we'll hit the Web3 roundup and get to the final headline.
Yeah, let's get into the Web3 roundup. Do you want me to go through it?
I've got it for this one. Let's do it. BNY Mellon give an approval to custody BTC, which is a historical move for the first bank to be given that. That's pretty interesting news. Also, coming from the TradFi side, this CEO of VanEck is so bullish. I've heard him talking like this before. VanEck predicts BTC will go to half of gold's market cap. I believe he said at some point that 30% of his money is in Bitcoin. I need to double check that, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate. Kamala Harris says she will encourage innovative tech like digital assets while protecting consumers and investors. That's some of the latest messaging coming out of the Democratic Party. On the ordinal side, we mentioned those have been moving as well. Node Monks and Puppets are up 14 and 18% respectively to a 0.18 Bitcoin and 0.1 BTC floor. In a few other pieces of news, Seed Phrase, legendary collector and trader, raises his market target for his 7-trait Mona Lisa of CryptoPunks from $200 million to $1 billion. Maybe an ambitious one for the bull market in 2025. Magic Eden announces the ME token will be on Solana. And finally, the former PacMoon team who switched over to Solana to run the Army token have called it quits and handed the control over to the community. They cited kind of challenges that they faced migrating from Blast over to Solana, and they felt that was too difficult for them now. That's
Not
the Web3
great.
roundup to get you up to speed with
Not
anything
great
else.
for my bags.
Are you still holding?
I did not see that until you wrote these things. I scrolled down. My God, I don't want to look at the chart.
It pumped, Brad. It went up on the news.
Excuse me while I go sell my bag.
It went up, but then I think it also then went down. So you do what you need to do while I do the final headline with Legendary. We'll come back to you in a second. So Legendary, the final headline is to do with what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about a bit of the memes. We're going to talk about
The AI part is the one we haven't touched on.
Oh, sure, yeah, the AI part. So the AI coins, have you got them, Legendary?
1 second, yeah.
So this whole sector has been on fire, and I guess this section was mainly going to be a question, to be honest. Have you got them on the screen, Legendary?
Yep, there we go.
Here we go. Okay, so you've got coins like, what have we got here? We've got, oh no, this is not the...
Wait a second, sorry, yeah. One moment on that. Apologies for the delay. We'll have it here.
So the whole market was like completely ripping. Obviously, you got this Tau token called Bitensa. up 20%, but almost 100% in the last 14 days. Renders up, Zero Labs up. If you scroll down a little bit further, Legendary, you've got like the whole, Near is up 20 something percent in the last 7 days. Artificial super intelligence is up 25%. Seems like you can buy any AI sounding coin in the last 24 days, in the last 24 hours or the last week or so, and be up. I just wanted to ask more than anything, how much do you guys know about the AI side of stuff? Are you bullish in any way on the tokens? Are you bullish in any way on the intersection of AI and crypto? Like, Legendary, maybe you first, like, what's your expertise here? And maybe the answer is nothing, because I am not super proficient on this one, but I just wanted to go around and ask, because this is one of the ones that, people are talking about. I just want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, just Stefano in the comments is asking, what the fuck is Tau? What do they even do? And that will be exactly my answer to that. The Tau chart is amazing to look at. Currently at $525. It did pump 80% over the last 7 days. It pumped hundreds of dollars over an even longer time frame. And I had no idea what they do. And I remember that one time in Vienna, I was going to a beautiful dinner to have steak. And my Uber driver was telling me that he's invested in crypto and he has a massive bet on Tau. And his reasoning was, if you look at the logo, that was his reasoning, not mine. The T in BitTensor, which I'm sharing on screen, looks like the Tesla logo. So he thinks that's Elon Musk's AI coin, and he put his entire crypto and stocks portfolio basically into that. He also told me if it goes over $500, he will retire, and it did go over $500. So I'm curious to see if I'll see him again, because this would have been a multiple six-figure win for him. I do not know a lot about the AI sector. I had focused more on the deep inside of things, which has an intersection with AI. I feel like it's a sector where you definitely could have made money if you watched what's trending and what the market is watching, but I have no idea on how sustainable these things are and how far we have progressed in the AI bubble, both for stocks and for crypto tokens, cryptocurrencies.
You'll be happy to know that literally no one knows what any of those do. I listen to a lot of technical podcasts, and all of them are like literally like nerd podcasts about like, what is this thing? What do these do? Here's like the deep technicals. And even then, most of them are like, I have to spend time on this because it is so ridiculous. And even then, it feels fugazi. It's like, like a lot of it, and Tau specifically has like been gone after by Martin Shkreli about like all these fake shit that they don't actually have, and how they're like, whatever. It's, no one knows is the TLDR on that. There's some people that sit there and come out and say like it might actually be a thing that's going on, but even the technical people in our space don't understand the depth of technicalities that take place on these AI coins.
Fair enough. Funky, I see you with your hand up on that. Do you have a quick take on BitTensor on the Tau token?
I do, actually. I know a lot about it. So originally this was built out as a Polkadot parachain, probably another reason no one knows anything about it. But basically, it is decentralized machine learning. So people who are running the nodes and mining this stuff, it's basically trying to gobble up large swaths of the internet to kind of create an open model of AI and whatnot. There's a really great conversation with the founder, Const is his name. And it's from like the fall of 2022. I will tell you, I tried to get the Tau token way back in the day, and it was like this janky Discord system where you had to give USDC, and then people were selling it peer to peer when it was like $25 a couple years ago. So I do know a good bit about it. I know we don't have time to get into it. I'm very bullish on the intersection of blockchain and AI. There's other teams that we're going to be providing infra for, such as OG Labs, Talus. Anytime you guys want to talk about this stuff, I'm sure I could probably wade into the weeds a little bit if you'd like to. But we've had Talus on our podcast, for instance, as guests. I can drop that if you guys want to watch it and just kind of see like what's happening. And of course, going back to Red Phone Crypto, that essay 69 Dreams and Delusions from last year, he largely spends a lot of time talking about how blockchain and AI, the intersection, is something that we're not really going to understand what's happening. But it is probably these two great things coming together technologically is going to be a boon for humanity in a lot of different ways.
One question: do you think the models are sustainable? Yes or no?
I can't say yes or no. I'd say I don't know, because I don't know enough about how the models operate themselves. So, but great.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I don't have an answer to it either. I was hoping you would actually just like cut through all the stuff for me, and I can just make a decision and go forward with that because I trust you. But it seems like we're all still screwed for a little bit.
So we're like kind of bullish, but also cognizant that we don't know. Okay, that's
Well, you
fine.
just
That's
see
a
two
nice-
things that are extremely powerful, right? And you hope the two things together would be extra, super, mega powerful,
If you
right?
take
And
this
like
powerful thing,
valuable.
you add it to this powerful thing, that equals double the power, right?
Well, that's the hope, right? Like it's the same thing with everything. Like you see stuff and you go, "Oh my God, this stuff is incredibly like it is like world shifting, awesome." But does it actually fit together, or is it like the whenever blockchain was popping off in 2021, where the iced tea company just changed their name to Blockchain Iced Tea and then got a valuation bump, right? Like there's literally no blockchain there, but it sounded nice, and because people didn't know enough about it, they threw money at it and it went up, and maybe we'll throw more money at it, but doesn't mean there's actually fundamentals underneath it. And that's kind of what people are trying to wade through now is there a fundamental link between the two things, which it can be, right? I understand that world of abundance verification is awesome, and that's what blockchain can offer, awesome, but like how those two things intrinsically link to each other and fundamentally like benefit from each other is tough for everyone to put their thumb on.
All right, fair points all around. I hope that was an interesting show, guys. We kind of jumped around to various sectors because a lot of the sectors are moving, a lot of stuff happening, a lot of interesting trends and concepts emerging from our conversations in Singapore. So yeah, we didn't quite get to the meme stuff, but everything's kind of hot at the moment. So hope you enjoyed the show. Jumped around a little bit, but I think we shared some interesting ideas on a variety of the sectors. That's it for today. Hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you to my legendary co-host, Legendary, and Bread. Thanks so much to our resident expert, Funky, on stage with us. And shout out to all the YouTube commenters, Alan, Justifano, Overarch, Husker, and Rune Lord as well, for keeping it going in the comments. Have a wonderful day. Take care. We'll see you back tomorrow. Same place, same time, 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour. Bye-bye.